Hey guys, and welcome to video 3 of what I'm calling week 10. So basically in this video we're going to talk about granting permissions. However, first I want to talk about the fix for an issue that we witnessed in the first two videos with not being able to log in using our newly created login IDs. And so basically I was incorrect about one thing, and then something else that the book isn't really clear on. Basically, so in order to make our login IDs work, we have to do two things. The first being we have to right click in Object Explorer on our server itself, navigate to Properties, go to Security, which I had pulled up Properties, but that was properties of the as it turns out, that was properties of SQL Server Management Studio and not the SQL Server itself. So we're going to click on Security, and we're going to want to make sure that this guy is checked right here, this radio button, SQL Server in authentication mode instead of Windows, or SQL Server in Windows authentication mode instead of Windows authentication mode. In previous versions of SQL Server Management Studio, this was called mixed mode. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. We're going to go ahead and close SQL Server Management Studio, and then we're going to click our Start menu. We're going to search for Services. We're going to scroll down to SQL Server. We're going to right click this guy and we're going to restart it. Then we're going to close our services. We're going to reopen SQL Server Management Studio. And now we should be able to authenticate using SQL Server authentication. So we'll do, username, and then we'll do password. So now we can connect. So that to be said, so we're going to reconnect using, so that's the fix for that. It's something that the book just says restart SQL. I think the book says restart SQL Server Management Studio. We need to restart the SQL Server service. So just so we're aware of that. So we'll go ahead and authenticate and go ahead and create a new query. I'm going to copy our notes over from the old one. So in this video, we're going to be talking about, like I said, permissions. And basically permissions, there's really two types of permissions, and the one that we're going to focus on more is going to be database permissions, and there's server permissions as well. And so basically, let me see. Yeah, and database permissions and server permissions, these are my terms. These are not terms in the book. Really what we're kind of talking about when we're talking about database permissions is we're talking about object permissions. And as you recall, object permissions is basically, or objects in the database are pretty much, it's pretty much anything, almost anything is a database object. And so really, there's two forms of kind of handling permissions, and that's grant and revoke. Grant allows us to give permissions, and revoke allows us to take permissions away. And so when we're working with grant, actually, I'm going to go ahead and talk about this really quick. So basically, when we're talking about grant, basically there's 5 permissions that we can grant to a user, and those are select, update, update, insert, delete, and execute. And so basically the first 4 are all pretty much exactly what they sound like, which is which allows us to execute, update, select, update, insert, and delete SQL. And then the 5th one, execute, allows us to grant user permission to run an executable database object, i.e. stored procedure. So let's go ahead and so basically let's go ahead and work through this a little bit. So what we can do is let's go ahead and grant some permissions to username. So grant select on, actually, well, let's talk about the basic syntax of this first, right? So basic syntax is going to be, let me pull it up here, grant permissions on object name to user. And so let's go ahead and grant some permissions. We'll probably have to create a couple more. Actually, no, we probably don't need to do that. So let's go ahead and grant some permissions to username. So grant select on orders to username. Oh. This is not existing, you do not have permissions. Let's do this for simplicity because I don't want to deal with this crap. Use Northwind grant select on orders to username. Does not exist, or we realize I'm finding it. DBO. Wasn't the autocomplete working? Databases, Northwind, security, users. Oh, so we never, so I guess we never actually got around, I guess it didn't take that username. I guess username never got created. Create username for login username. And if we refresh here, okay, now we have username. Okay. Yeah, so basically I did a use statement, and so now just for simplicity I'm just going to do use here, username. Username already exists in the current database. Let's do this. Create user. Oh, okay. Okay, I see what I did wrong. Okay, so now, whoops. So now what I can do is I'm going to go ahead and disconnect and reconnect using username. Which hopefully I didn't just blow away all of my notes, which I think I did. That will be fun to type back out. Oh, no, I didn't. Okay, sweet. Okay, so now basically I should be logged in as username, so I should be able to do select star from employees, and I shouldn't be able to see that. Let me create a new query. I thought I was authenticated as that's username, server, database. Okay, so I'm logged in as okay, so let me do this. Set username. Okay, so now I should be able to do. I don't know why when I did that authentication it didn't. That doesn't make any sense. So now select current user. Okay, so I'm logged in as username now, so I should, whoops, select star from employees. Okay, so now I got the issue that I wanted, which was the select permission was denied on the object employees database Northwind schema DBO. Not sure why the mapping didn't automatically carry over. I don't know why it took me back to my default user. But anyway, so now that we're logged in as username, you can see, okay, I don't have permissions to this. But if I change that to orders, you can see I can view orders. But if I go to order details, I can't go to order details. So let's go ahead and disconnect and reconnect using Windows Authentication. Set user DBO. This probably isn't going to work. Let's do this. Let's just close out of here. Just reopen it. See and you guys are starting to see, this is one of the reasons that I don't like SQL Server. There's always some kind of weirdness going on behind the scenes that I don't inherently like. So let's see. So select current user. Okay, so now I'm logged in as the right user. So let's go ahead and first of all plug this back. And let's go ahead and revoke some permissions. So we're going to go ahead and so basically revoke is more or less the same syntax as grant. We're just going to do revoke permissions. Revoke permissions on object name to user. So we're going to go ahead and do a revoke select on orders to, the only difference is I have to do yeah, we're going to go ahead and plug in use Northwind again just because I don't feel like dealing with this reference stuff. Use Northwind. Revoke select on orders to username. Okay, so now we've went ahead and revoked the permissions to username. So now if I do set user, username, wrap in quotes, and I do a select star from orders. You can see I don't have permissions to orders anymore, but I did a second ago. So that's how we that's how we revoke permissions. Now, what I can do is I can also regrant, which I'm going to have to disconnect and reconnect. Set user. So I'm logged in as I'm still rolling as username. I don't want to be username anymore. Come on. Okay, so I'm going to log back in. We're just going to try to plow through this because this is getting to be tedious. So a couple things that I can do. I can, like I was saying, so I can, like I said, I can grant to, database objects. So I can also do, a grant star to, crap, I got to use Northwind again. So I can also do, I should be able to do a grant star, which grants all the permissions to, or on orders. Let's talk about this first. So, actually, yeah, let's talk about this. So I can do a grant, I should be able to do a grant star on employees to username. Well, I guess I can't. Oh, that's right. Okay, so grant star is a MySQL thing. My bad. So yeah, I can't do that. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about the other thing I wanted to talk about, and that is I can grant permissions to specific columns. So I can do a grant select on employees first name, last name, title to username. So now if I do set user username and I do a select star from employees, you can see I got denied on all these columns, but if I do first name, last name, title, you can see I can pull everything back. So I can get pretty granular with the permissions that I grant to. Let me just make sure I'm still recording here. Yeah, so I can get pretty granular in regard to the permissions that I grant a particular user. And then let me see here. We're what, 20 minutes? And then so I can also do this as a script, right? So I can do after I, whoops. Man, I hate Windows. So after I log out and log back in, I can also do this as a script and do this in batches. So I can do let me scroll down here. So I can also do this as a script, and that I can do use north wind. So I can do grant select update delete insert on orders employees to username go what am I doing? Oop. Worker details. I thought that was the name of the thing, but the table, wasn't it? Tables. On order details, because there's white space. because that makes sense. Okay, so now if I do so now I can do a set user, username, select star from employees, join join orders O on e.employee ID equals O.employee ID. You can see I was able to execute that query. Now, so I can execute this. Now, like I said, I ran that in a batch. So what I can do now is I can do select star from orders O order details OD products P. You can see, so I did an implicit join, but you can also see I got select permission was denied on products database and basically the reason being I don't have permissions to products. So I granted it to employees and orders, but I didn't grant it to products. So you can see I was able to run that, and now I ran this giant query that I didn't need to run, but you could see that I successfully ran my query because of the permissions I granted. And so guys, that is, we're at about 30 minutes, so that is pretty much everything that, not everything, but that's a high level of permissions in SQL Server. So I don't know that we're going to get into roles this week. We'll probably touch on roles next week.